The fiduciary duty is the highest level of responsibility a financial professional can have toward a client. A fiduciary must always act in the client's best interest. They must prioritize the client's financial well being above their own, provide full disclosure. They must be transparent about fees, commission, and potential conflict of interest. Avoid conflict of interest. They cannot recommend an investment just because it benefits them financially. Offer continuous monitoring. Fiduciaries must regularly review and adjust investment strategies for their client. This standard applies mainly to registered investment advisor, financial planner, and certain retirement plan advisor. If an investment advisor has two similar funds to recommend, but one is cheaper for the client while the other pays them a higher commission, they must choose the cheaper one. Their job is to protect the client financial well-being, even if it means earning less themselves. The suitability standard applies to broker dealers and their registered representative. Unlike fiduciaries, the brokers are not required to always act in the best interest of the client. Instead, they must recommend investments that are suitable based on the client risk tolerance, financial situation, investment objectives. This means that as long as the investment is appropriate for the client, a broker can legally recommend an option that pays them a higher commission even if a lower cost alternative exists. For example, if a client is looking for a mutual fund, the broker can recommend a fund with higher fees, which benefits the broker as long as it fits the client overall financial profits. Fiduciary versus suitability key differences. Fiduciary standard must act in the client best interest. Suitability standard can recommend suitable option that may pay them more. Fiduciary standard full transparency on fees and conflicts. Suitability standard limited disclosure required. Fiduciary standard ongoing duty to monitor investment. Stability standard no obligation after the transaction. Fiduciary standard client first approach. Stability standard sales driven approach. A major difference is ongoing responsibility. A fiduciary must continuously monitor a client portfolios while a broker is only responsible for the suitability of investment at the time of sale. To improve investor protection, the SEC introduced regulation Best Interest Reg BI in 2020. It applies to broker dealers and is meant to be a middle ground between suitability and fiduciary duty. Reg BI requires broker to disclose conflict of interest. Client must be informed of any potential conflict, consider cost and alternatives. Broker must evaluate the best available option, provide recommendation in the client best interest. They cannot recommend something just because it pays them more. Follow stricter compliance policies. Firms must ensure their brokers act responsibly. While Reg BI is an improvement over the suitability standard, it still does not require brokers to provide ongoing investment monitoring like fiduciary does. Fiduciary duty versus Reg BI key differences. Fiduciary duty must act in the client best interest at all time. Reg BI only required to act in best interest at time of recommendation. Fiduciary duty ongoing monitoring of investment. Reg BI no ongoing obligation after sales. Fiduciary duty full disclosure of all conflict. Reg BI conflict must be disclosed but not necessarily eliminated. While Reg BI raises the bar for broker dealers, it still falls short of full fiduciary standard. Understanding the difference between these standards is crucial for investor. If you want a financial professional who continuously work in your best interest, you should seek a fiduciary. If you work with a broker, be aware that they may recommend higher fee investment that benefit them. If you are unsure, ask question. Are you a fiduciary? Do you have any conflict of interest? How are you compensated? Being informed about these standards helps investor protect their financial future. A conflict of interest occurs when a financial professional, personal, or financial interest could influence their ability to act in the best interest of their client. These conflicts can happen at many levels between a broker and their client, within a financial firm, between corporate executives and shareholders. For example, if a broker recommends a high fee mutual fund because they earn a higher commission when a lower cost alternative exists, this is a conflict of interest. They may still legally recommend the fund under the suitability standard, but the conflict must be disclosed under regulation best interest Reg BI. Let's explore some common example of conflict in the financial industry. Conflict of interest can take many forms. Some of the most common examples include revenue sharing agreements, when financial firms receive payments from third parties such as mutual funds or investment managers in exchange for promoting their products. Proprietary products, when a firm sells its own investment products instead of independent option, which could be better or cheaper for the client. Cross selling, a firm may push additional service such as loans, insurance, or investment account to generate extra revenue even if they are not the best fit for the client. Performance based fees. An advisor may take riskier investment to boost their own performance bonuses even if it's not suitable for the client. Gifts and incentives. Financial professional must receive perks, tips, bonuses, or luxury items from companies in exchange for recommending their products. Each of these situations creates a potential conflict, which is why financial professional must disclose and manage them properly. One of the most important ways to address conflict of interest is full disclosure. Under securities laws and regulation, financial professional must inform their client about conflict that could impact their recommendation. Key disclosure requirements. SEC and FINRA rules require firms to disclose conflict in writing, particularly in Form ADV for investment advisor, and regulation best practices for broker dealers, client agreements, and prospectuses. These documents outline fees, commission, and other financial incentives that could influence recommendation. Annual reports and filings. Publicly traded firms must disclose conflict in their annual reports and SEC filings. A well-informed investor can make better financial decisions when they understand the potential biases of their financial professional. While disclosure is important, it does not eliminate the conflict. Firms and financial professionals must also take steps to manage and reduce the impact of conflict of interest. Best practices for mitigating conflict: independent oversight, having compliance team or third-party audits to review recommendation and ensure they are in the client best interest. Fee transparency charges flat fees or fee-based compensation instead of commissions to reduce biases in investment recommendation. Restricted risk policies. Firms may restrict employees from trading certain stock or recommending specific products when conflict exists. Ethics training and compliance program. Regular training to help financial professionals recognize and properly handle conflict. When conflicts are properly managed, trust in the financial system is strengthened. An investor can have greater confidence in the advice they receive. One of the most infamous conflict of interest in recent history involved Wells Fargo fake account scandal. What happened? Employees at Wells Fargo were under extreme pressure to meet sales target. To do so, they opened millions of fake banks account and credit cards without customer consent. The incentive structure encouraged unethical behavior, creating a massive conflict of interest. What was the impact? Wells Fargo faced $3 billion in fines and severe reputational damage. Thousands of employees were fired and top executive resigned. The scandal highlighted the danger of conflict of interest and the importance of strong compliance measure. This case is a powerful reminder of what can happen when conflict of interest are not properly managed. In the financial industry, relationship matters. Brokers, investment advisors, and firms often interact with clients, vendors, and business partners. To maintain these relationships, it's common to exchange small gifts, meals, or event invitation. However, without proper limits, gifts and entertainments could be used as bribe or improper incentive to influence business decision. For example, a broker might lavish a client with expensive trips in exchange for directing investment to their firm. A fund manager could accept costly gifts from a company they are supposed to evaluate objectively. A compliance officer might turn a blind eye to violation if they are receiving personal perks. These scenarios create conflict of interest and erode trust in financial markets. That's why FINRA, the SEC, and other regulators have strict rules to prevent unethical behavior. One of the most important regulation in this area is FINRA Rule 3320, also known as the influencing or rewarding employees of other rules. One of the most important regulation in this area is FINRA Rule 3220, also known as the influencing or rewarding employees of other rules. Key provision of FINRA Rules 3220 prohibits excessive gifts that could improperly influence business decision, limits gifts to $100 per person per year if given to someone employed by another firm, require firms to keep records of all gifts given or received. This rule is designed to prevent conflict of interest while still allowing modest business gesture. The $100 limit ensures that gifts are seen as a courtesies rather than attempts to gain under favor. To ensure compliance, firms must track all gifts and entertainment expenses. Here's how. Gift limit $100 per person per year as outlined in FINRA Rule 3220. Entertainment exception. Reasonable businesses, meals, and event invitation may exceed $100 if the giver is present. Record keeping. Firms must maintain detailed records of all gifts, including the recipient name, the amount, value of the gift, the date, and purpose. These records help firms demonstrate compliance in case of an audit or regulatory inquiry. Not all gifts and entertainment are treated equally. Some are considered acceptable while others violate ethical and regulatory standard. Acceptable practices. Giving a $50 holiday gift to a long-term client as a goodwill gesture. Taking a client to a sports game or dinner as long as the giver attends. Sending a $75 gift basket to a business partner during the holidays. Unacceptable practices. Giving a $500 luxury watch to an executive in exchange for directing trades to your firm. Providing an all expenses paid vacation to a client without a legitimate business purpose, giving cash or cash equivalent such as gift cards, which are strictly prohibited. The key distinction is whether the gift is reasonable and customary, or if it could be seen as an attempt to unduly influence business decision. While the $100 limit applies to gift businesses, entertainment such as meals, sporting events, and conferences has more flexibility. However, it still must be reasonable and must serve a legitimate business purpose. Business entertainment guidelines. The event must be attended by the giver. Lavish or excessive entertainment is not allowed. The event must align with normal business practices. A conference dinner is fine, but a weekend yacht trip is excessive. The goal is to maintain a professional relationship without creating the perception of improper influence. To stay compliant and avoid violation, financial professionals and firms should follow best practices, set clear internal policies. Firms should establish stricter guidelines than FINRA minimum rules. Train employees regularly. Ongoing compliance training helps ensure that employees understand the rules. Use pre-approval for gifts. Some firms require compliance department approval for any gifts over a certain threshold. Monitor and audit gift activity. Regularly reviewing records help detect and prevent potential violation. By following these best practices, firms can avoid regulatory penalties and maintain a strong ethical culture. Let's start with outside business activities, OBA. An OBA refers to any compensated work or business venture that a registered representative engages in outside of their primary firm. Examples include running a real estate business, working as a consultant or board member for another company, having a side business related to securities. Why does this matter? Because outside business activities can create conflict of interest or distract from a rep obligation to their client and firm. That's why regulators require full disclosure and approval before engaging in OBAs. Under FINRA Rule 3270, a registered representative must notify their firm in writing before engaging in any outside business activity. Key points of FINRA Rules 3270. Representative must provide written notice before engaging in an OBA. Firms must evaluate the activity to determine if it conflicts with the rep duties. The firms can approve or deny the activity based on potential conflict. If approved, the firm may require ongoing supervision of the activity. Failure to disclose an OBA is a serious violation and can result in fines, suspension, or even termination from the industry. Now let's talk about private securities transaction, PSTs, which are a major compliance concern. A private securities transaction occurs when a registered representative participates in securities transactions that are not recorded or supervised by their firm. This is often called selling away because their rep is selling securities outside of their firm oversight. Examples include selling private placement without firm approval, participating in an investment deal with a client, raising funds for a startup or business venture without disclosing it. Because these transactions are not monitored by the firm, they pose serious risk, including fraud, conflict of interest, and investor harm. To prevent misconduct, FINRA enforces Rule 3280, which governs private securities transaction. Key requirements of FINRA Rule 3280. Written notification. A rep must notify their firm before engaging in any PST. Firm review. The firm must evaluate whether the transaction should be approved or denied. Supervision. If the firm approves the transaction, they must supervise it as if it were part of the firm business. Compensation rules. If a rep receives compensation for the transaction, the firm must formally approve and supervise it. Engaging in private securities transaction without proper disclosure is considered selling away, which is a major violation and can lead to severe penalties. Selling away happens when a registered representative engages in private securities transaction without their firm approval or oversight. This is a big problem because the firm cannot monitor the transaction to ensure it is legitimate. The rep may be involved in fraudulent or high risk investment. Investor could be harmed without any protection from the firm. Selling away is one of the FINRA most common enforcement action because it exposes investor to regulated deals and often leads to severe disciplinary action for the rep involved. Firms take this issue very seriously and any violation are met with heavy penalties. To prevent undisclosed outside business activities and selling away, firms have strict tracking and supervision procedure. Annual questionnaires. Many firms require reps to disclose all outside activities every year. Pre-approval process. Firms often require written approval before allowing outside works or security transaction. Ongoing monitoring. Compliance team review financial records and reports to detect undisclosed activities. Disciplinary action. If a rep is caught violating disclosure rules, they can face suspension, fines, or termination. These policies help firms stay compliant while protecting investor and the integrity of the market. A customer complaint is any written grievance from a customer alleging a problem with the handling of their account, a transaction, or the conduct of registered representative. A complaint can involve unauthorized trading, a trade executed without the customer approval, misrepresentation or fraud, providing misleading or false information, failure to follow instruction, not executing trades as a request, unsuitable recommendation, advising investment that do not align with the client risk profile, excessive trading, trading excessively to generate commission. Even if a complaint does not seem valid, it must still be taken seriously and documented as per FINRA rules. When a firm receives a customer complaint, it must follow a structured process to address it properly. The key steps include acknowledgement. The firm must acknowledge the complaint promptly and communicate with the customer. Investigation. The firm reviews relevant records, transaction history, and communication to determine the validity of the complaint, resolution, or response. If the complaint is valid, the firm may offer a resolution such as compensation or corrective action. If it's not, a formal response explaining why is sent to the customer. Escalation if needed. If the customer is not satisfied, they may escalate the dispute to FINRA, arbitration, or another resolution process. Documentation. Firms must keep records of all complaints and how they were handled to comply with regulatory reporting rules. Proper complaints handling can prevent dispute from escalating and protect both the firm and its customers. Under FINRA Rule 4530, firms are required to report certain complaints to regulators, especially those that involve allegation of theft, perjury, or fraud, significant customer harm, or financial losses, serious rule violation by registered representatives. Firms must file a report with FINRA within 30 days if a complaint meets these criteria. Additionally, all complaints must be documented and stored for at least 4 years, even if they don't require formal reporting. This rule ensures that regulators can monitor trends in customer complaints and take action if necessary. If a customer complaint cannot be resolved within the firm, they may escalate it to FINRA arbitration. Arbitration is a formal dispute resolution process where an independent panel review the case and make a legally binding decision. Why arbitration instead of court? Faster than traditional litigation, less expensive than going to court, confidential process, binding decision, no lengthy appeals. Most brokerage account agreements include mandatory arbitration clauses, meaning customer must go through arbitration rather than suing the firm directly. The arbitration process follows these key steps. Filing a claim. The customer submits a formal complaint to FINRA. Response from the firm. The firm has a set period to respond to the allegation. Selection of arbitrators. A panel of neutral arbitrators is chosen to oversee the case. Pre-hearing proceeding. Both sides exchange information and submit evidence. The arbitration hearing. The case is presented before the arbitrators, similar to a trial. Final decision. The arbitrators issue a legally binding ruling which may include financial compensation for the customer. Arbitration case typically take 12 to 16 months from start to finish, but the decision is final and enforceable. Not all disputes need to go through formal arbitration. FINRA also offers mediation, which is less formal, faster, non-binding. In mediation, a neutral third-party mediator helps the firm and the customer reach a mutual agreement. If both sides agree on a resolution, the case is closed. If not, they can proceed to arbitration. Mediation often saves time and money, making it a preferred option for resolving disputes. The securities industry thrives on trust and transparency. Investors need to believe that the system is fair and free from manipulation. When unethical behavior occurs, whether it's insider trading, misleading financial reporting, or conflict of interest, it can damage the reputation of entire industry. Unethical practices can lead to financial losses for investor, legal penalties and fines for firms, loss of trust in financial system. For financial professional, ethical behavior is not just about avoiding trouble. It's about doing the right things even when no one is watching. When faced with an ethical dilemma, financial professionals should follow a structured approach to decision making. Here are three common framework. The utilitarian approach. This approach focuses on maximizing overall benefit and minimizing harm. A decision is ethical if it produces the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Example, a financial advisor avoid recommending high risk investment to elderly client because the potential harm outweigh the benefit. The deontological approach. This approach is based on rules and duties. A decision is ethical if it follows established moral principles regardless of the outcomes. Example, A broker refuses to engage in insider trading not because they fear getting caught, but because it's inherently wrong. The virtue ethics approach. This approach focuses on character and integrity. A decision is ethical if it aligns with the values of honesty, fairness, and professionalism. Example: a trader chooses to disclose a potential conflict of interest even if they are not legally required to, because transparency is the right thing to do. Using these frameworks can help professionals navigate complex ethical dilemmas and make choices that align with both legal and moral standards. One of the most well-known ethical violations in finance is insider trading. Let's look at a real-world example. Case: the Raj Rajaratnam scandal. Raj Rajaratnam, the founder of Galleon Group, was convicted of insider trading in 2011. He used non-public information obtained from corporate insider to make billions in profit. His illegal activity were eventually uncovered through wiretap and investigation by the SEC. What went wrong? He ignored ethical and legal boundaries to gain an unfair advantage. He violated investor trust and manipulated the market. He faced 11 years in prison and over $150 million in penalties. This case highlights why strict compliance with ethical guidelines is essential, not only to avoid legal consequences but also to protect the integrity of financial markets. Another common ethical issue is misrepresenting financial data to deceive investor. Let's examine a high-profile case: the Enron scandal. Enron, one of the largest energy companies in the US, manipulated financial statement to hide debt and inflate profits. Investors were misled into believing the company was financially strong when in reality it was collapsing under massive undisclosed losses. What were the consequences? Enron filed for bankruptcy in 2001, wiping out billions in shareholder value. Executives were convicted of fraud and conspiracy. New regulations like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act were introduced to prevent similar misconduct. This case demonstrates how a lack of ethics can lead to financial ruin, not just for a company but for its employee and investor. A strong ethical culture does not happen by accident. It requires consistent effort and leadership. Here's how financial firms can foster ethical behavior. Clear code of ethics. Every firm should have a written code of conduct that outline expected behavior and consequences for violation. Regular ethics training. Employees should receive ongoing training on ethical decision making, compliance, and industry regulation. Open communication channels. Firms should encourage employees to speak up about unethical behavior without fear of retaliation. Whistleblower protection play a key role in ensuring accountability. Ethical leadership. Leaders set the tone for the organization. When top executives prioritize ethics, employees are more likely to follow suit. Strong compliance programs. Firms should have internal control and monitoring system to detect unethical activities before they escalate. By focusing on prevention rather than punishment, firms can create an environment where ethical behavior is the norm. Before we dive into specific types of risk, let's first define what we mean by risk in the world of investing. Investment risk refers to the possibility of losing money or not achieving the expected return on an investment. Some investments are riskier than other, but all investment carry some level of risk. Risk comes from various sources such as economic downturns, company performance, interest rate changes, and even geopolitical events. The key to successful investing is not avoiding risk altogether because that's impossible, but rather understanding and managing it effectively. Let's start with one of the most common types of risk: market risk. Market risk, also called systemic risk, is the risk of losing money due to fluctuation in the overall financial market. It affects almost all investment to some extent and cannot be eliminated through diversification. Factors that contribute to market risk: stock market volatility. Prices of stock and bonds can fluctuate due to investor sentiment, corporate earning, or economic condition. Recession and economic crisis. Economic downturns can cause broad decline across financial markets. Geopolitical events, wars, political instability, or international conflict can impact global markets. Example, in 2008, the global financial crisis caused stock market worldwide to plummet, affecting nearly all investors regardless of the specific stocks they owned. Since market risk cannot be avoided, investors manage it by adjusting their asset allocation, choosing a mix of stocks, bonds, and other investment to reduce exposure to a single asset classes. Credit risk refers to the possibility that a borrower will fail to repay their loan or meet their financial obligation. This is especially important in bond investing, where investors lend money to corporation or government in exchange for interest payment. Who face credit risk? Bond investor. If a company issue bonds and later struggle financially, it may fail to pay interest or repay the principal. Banks and lenders. If a borrower defaults on a loan, the lender loses money. Simplifier and creditors. Businesses that extend credit to customer run the risk that those customer won't pay. Example, if an investor buys a corporate bond from a company with a poor credit rating, they are taking on higher risk that the company might not be able to make interest payment or could even default. To manage credit risk, investor look at credit rating assigned by agencies like Moody's, S&P's and Fitch, which assesses a borrower ability to repay debt. Bonds with higher rating, AAA or AA, have lower credit risk but also lower return, while bonds with lower ratings offer higher potential return but comes with greater risk. Liquidity risk refer to the difficulty of selling an investment quickly without significantly impacting its price. Why does liquidity matter? Highly liquid asset can be sold easily. Liquid asset may take longer to sell. Investors face liquidity risk when they own assets that are hard to sell quickly or if the market suddenly dries up. Example, imagine an investor owns shares in a small startup that is not publicly traded. If they need to sell those shares quickly, they might not find a buyer, forcing them to sell at a significant discount or hold on to the investment longer than intended. Liquidity risk can be reduced by keeping a portion of portfolio in easily tradable assets like cash, large company stocks or exchange traded funds, ETFs. How interest rates and inflation affect investment. Interest rate risk. Interest rate risk affects investment that pay fixed return like bonds. When interest rates rise, the value of existing bonds drops because new bonds are issued with higher yield. Example, suppose you buy a bond paying 3% interest. If interest rates rise to 5%, your bond become less attractive because new bonds offer a better return, reducing its market value. Inflation rate. Inflation risk refers to the erosion of purchasing power over time. If inflation rises faster than the return on an investment, the real value of investor money shrinks. Example, a saving account earning 2% interest while inflation is at 5% means the investor is actually losing purchasing power despite earning nominal interest. To manage these risks, investors often diversify into inflation protected securities and real asset like real estate or commodities. All risk in investing fall into one of two categories. Systemic risk, market risk, affects the entire market, stock, bonds, real estate, etc. Cannot be eliminated through diversification. Example, market crashes, recession, interest rate changes. Unsystematic risk, affect individual stocks or sector, can be reduced through diversification. Example, a company facing bankruptcy, a bad earning report, leadership changes. Example, if an investor holds only airline stock and the airline industry suffers a crisis, their entire portfolio is at risk. However, if they own a mix of stocks from different industries, they can reduce their overall risk exposure. The key takeaways: diversification helps manage unsystematic risk, but systemic risk require broader risk management strategies. Diversification is one of the core principles of investing. The idea is simple. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. By spreading investment across different asset sectors and geographical region, investor can reduce the impact of a single poor performing investment. Example, imagine an investor holds only technology stock. If the tech sector crashes, their entire portfolio takes a hit. However, if they also own bonds, healthcare stocks, commodities, and international investment, a decline in tech stock won't wipe out their entire investment. Diversification is not about avoiding risk entirely, it's about managing it. A well diversified portfolio smooths out volatility and provide more consistent return over time. What is asset allocation? Asset allocation refers to how an investor divides their money among different asset classes based on their financial goals, risk tolerance, and time horizon. The three main asset classes are stocks, high growth potential but higher risk; bonds, lower risk, provides steady income; cash and cash equivalents, low risk but minimal return. Some portfolios also include alternative investment like real estate, commodities, and cryptocurrencies for additional diversification. Why is asset allocation important? It determines the majority of portfolio return. Studies show that asset allocation contributes more to return than individual stock selection. It helps manage risk. A mix of asset helps balance market ups and downs. It aligns with investor goals. Younger investors may prefer more stocks for growth, while retirees may prioritize bond for stability. Example, a 30-year-old investor planning for retirement may hold 80% stocks and 20% bonds, while a 60-year-old retirees might prefer 40% stock and 60% bonds to reduce the risk. Diversification is most effective when the assets in a portfolio are not highly correlated. What is correlation? Correlation measures how two investment move in relation to each other. Positive correlation, two assets move in the same direction. Negative correlation, when one asset goes up, the other tends to go down. Zero correlation, no relationship between the movement of the two assets. How correlation affect diversification? A portfolio with highly correlated asset may still be at risk if all investment decline together. The goal is to combine assets that respond differently to market condition. Example, stock and bonds often have negative correlation. When stock fail, bonds may rise, reducing overall risk. Gold often acts as a hedge against inflation and economic downturns. International investment can offer geographical diversification, reducing exposure to domestic market fluctuation. The key is to build portfolio with a mix of assets that don't always move in the same direction, so there is always something acting as a cushion against market downturn. Even if an investor starts with a well-diversified portfolio, market movement will cause asset allocation to shift over time. This is why rebalancing is necessary. What is rebalancing? Rebalancing is the process of adjusting the portfolio back to its original target allocation. Example, imagine an investor portfolio was originally 60% stock and 40% bonds. If stock perform well and now make up 75% of the portfolio, the investor may be taking on more risk than intended. Rebalancing would involve selling some stocks and buying more bonds to restore the 60-40 split. Common rebalancing methods: time-based rebalancing, adjusting the portfolio at regular intervals; threshold-based rebalancing, rebalancing only when asset allocation drift beyond a certain percentage; using new contribution. Instead of selling asset, an investor can use new contribution to buy underweighted asset to restore balance. Rebalancing ensure the portfolio stay aligned with the investor risk tolerance and long-term goals. Suitability means that any investment recommendation must be appropriate for customer financial situation, objectives, and risk tolerance. This is legal and ethical obligation for broker and advisor. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority FINRA has strict suitability rules, specifically FINRA Rule 2111, which requires firms and their representatives to ensure recommendation align with customer financial needs and investment objectives, consider the customer risk tolerance and time horizon, are responsible given the characteristics of the product. Unlike the fiduciary duty, which requires advisor to always act in the client best interest, suitability focuses on making appropriate recommendation. This means that while a recommendation may not be absolute best option as long as it is suitable, it means regulatory requirements. Before making any recommendation, financial professional must collect detailed customer information to create an investment profile. This profile includes investment objectives, growth, income, capital preservation, speculation, etc., time horizon, how long the customer plans to hold the investment, risk tolerance, the customer ability and willingness to handle market fluctuation, liquidity needs, how easily asset need to be converted into cash, tax status, determine tax efficient investment strategies, other financial information, income, net worth, existing investment and expenses. Example, a young investor with a long-term horizon and high risk tolerance may be suited for growth, stocks, or aggressive funds, while a retiree needs steady income and low risk may be better suited for bonds or dividend-paying stocks. Collecting and analyzing this information is the first step in making suitable investment recommendation. Each investment product has specific suitability factors that must be considered before making a recommendation. Key suitability factors for common investment products: stock and equities, suitable for investors seeking growth with moderate high risk tolerance; bonds and fixed income, suitable for investors needing income and lower volatility; mutual funds and ETFs, suitable for diversification but fees and risk level vary; options and derivatives, high risk, suitable for sophisticated investor; annuities, suitable for long-term investor seeking income but may have surrender charges. Example, an investor with a low risk tolerance and short-term horizon should not be placed in high risk speculative stock or leveraged ETFs, as these could lead to larger losses in a short period. Similarly, a long term investor looking for tax deferred growth might find an annuity or retirement focused mutual fund more appropriate. Understanding product specific suitability ensure customers receive investment aligned with their financial goals. Even when an investment appears suitable, documenting the suitability determination is critical for regulatory compliance. Why documentation matters: provides a record of why a recommendation was made, protect both the customer and the financial professional in case of disputes, help firms comply with FINRA and SEC regulation. What should be documented: customer investment profile, rationale for the investment recommendation, customer acknowledgement of the investment risk, any changes in the customer financial situation that may affect suitability. Failure to properly document suitability decisions can lead to regulatory fines, legal issues, and potential loss of licensure. Under the old suitability standard, an investment recommendation only needed to be appropriate for a client financial profile. This means that a broker could recommend an investment with high commission as long as it was considered suitable. However, Reg BI raises the bar. Now, brokers must ensure that their recommendations are not just suitable but in the best interest of the client. This means they must evaluate multiple investment options rather than just suggesting one that pays them the highest commission. Consider all relevant factors such as risk, cost, and potential return. Minimize conflict of interest that might lead to biased recommendation. This change is a major step forward in protecting investors and ensuring they receive fair, objective financial advice. To comply with Reg BI, broker dealers must follow four key obligations. These obligations are designed to improve transparency, fairness, and accountability in investment recommendation. Disclosure obligation. Broker dealers must provide clear and comprehensive disclosure to clients about their role, the fees they charge, and any conflict of interest that may affect their recommendation. For example, if a broker dealer earns higher commission for selling certain mutual funds, they must disclose this information so that the client is aware of potential biases. Care obligation. This obligation requires brokers to understand the risk and reward of the investment they recommend, evaluate reasonable alternative before making a recommendation, ensure the investment aligns with the client's financial goals, risk tolerance, and investment profile. In simple terms, broker must do their homework before making any recommendation. They can't just push product that benefit them financially. They must focus on what's best for the client. Conflict of interest obligation. Firms and brokers must identify, eliminate, or mitigate conflict of interest that could lead to biased investment advice. For example, if a firm receives incentives to promote a specific stock or mutual fund, they must either stop these incentives or disclose them to clients. Compliance obligation. Firms must establish and enforce policies to ensure Reg BI is followed. This include training employees on compliance, monitoring investment recommendation to detect potential violation, taking disciplinary action if brokers fail to act in the client best interest. The compliance obligation ensure that firms are actively enforcing Reg BI rather than treating it as just as a written rule. One of the most important disclosure document under Reg BI is Form CRS, Customer Relationship Summary. This document is designed to give investors a clear, concise overview of their relationship with a broker, dealer, or investment advisor. What Form CRS must include: the type of service the firm provides, how the firm earns money, conflict of interest that may impact investment recommendation, whether the firm has disciplinary history related to securities violation. Key requirements for Form CRS. It must be written in plain English, making it easy for client to understand. It must be limited to 2 pages. Firm must provide it to customer at the start of their relationship and whenever material changes occur. This document is an essential tool for ensuring that client fully understand the nature of their financial relationship before making investment decision. Reg BI has fundamentally changed how brokers make investment recommendation. Now, they must take a more comprehensive and ethical approach when advising client. Here are some key changes. More thorough customer analysis. A broker must assess not just suitability but whether an investment is truly in the client best interest based on their financial profile. Greater documentation requirement. Firm must keep detailed records of why a recommendation was made and how it complies with Reg BI. Fewer conflict of interest. Broker must disclose and mitigate incentive that could lead to biased recommendation. Increased transparency. Client receive clearer information about fees, risk, and alternative investment option. Let's consider an example to illustrate how Reg BI works in practice. Before Reg BI suitability standard, a broker recommend a mutual fund with a 5% commission. While this investment is suitable for the client, the broker does not mention that there is a similar mutual fund with a lower 1% commission. Under the old suitability standard, this would have been acceptable. Scenario 2. After Reg BI best interest standard, now under Reg BI, the broker must consider lower cost alternative and compare them to higher commission mutual fund. Disclose any conflict of interest related to commission. Ensure that the fines recommendation is truly in the conflict best interest. This example highlights how Reg BI reduces conflict of interest and improve investment advice for clients. One of the most important tax consideration in investing is understanding how different types of investment income are taxed. Capital gains. A capital gain occurs when an asset is sold for more than its purchase price. These gains are divided into two categories. Short-term capital gains. Assets held for 1 year or less are taxed as ordinary income, which can be as high as 37% for high earners. Long-term capital gains. Assets held for more than a year qualify for lower tax rates, typically 0%, 15%, or 20% depending on income. Key takeaways. Holding investment for more than a year can result in significant tax saving due to lower long-term capital gains tax rates. Ordinary income. Ordinary income includes wages, interest income, and short-term capital gains. This type of income is taxed at the investor marginal tax rate, which can be much higher than long-term capital gains rate. For example, bond interest income is taxed at ordinary income rates, making it less tax efficient compared to stocks, which benefit from capital gains treatment. Tax loss harvesting is a strategy used to reduce taxable capital gains by selling investment at a loss. This approach allows investors to offset gains with losses, ultimately lowering their overall tax bill. How it works. Let's say an investor has $10,000 gain from selling stock A but also has a $5,000 loss from stock B. The loss from stock B can be used to offset the gain from stock A, meaning the investor only needs to pay taxes on a net gain of $5,000 instead of $10,000. If an investor has more losses than gains in a given year, they can deduct up to $3,000 of losses against ordinary income, with any remaining losses carried forward to future years. Key rules to remember. The wash sale rule. A common mistake investor makes is selling a security at a loss and repurchasing it too soon. The IRS wash sale rule prohibits investors from claiming a tax loss if they buy the same or a substantially identical security within 30 days before or after selling it. To avoid violating the wash sale rule, investors can wait at least 31 days before repurchasing the same security. Invest in a similar but not identical security as a replacement. Be carefully planning sales and purchases. Investors can use tax loss harvesting to improve after-tax portfolio return over time. Not all investments are taxed the same way, which means where you hold them matters. A strategy known as asset location helps investors place investment in the right types of account to minimize taxes. Taxable versus tax advantage accounts. Investors can hold assets in two main types of account. Taxable accounts, brokerage accounts where gains, dividends, and interest are taxed annually. Tax advantage accounts. These includes 401ks, IRAs, and Roth IRAs, which offer tax benefits such as tax deferred or tax-free growth. What to hold in taxable accounts. Since taxable accounts don't offer tax advantages, it's best to hold investments that are already tax efficient, such as stock with long-term capital gains potential, municipal bonds which generate tax-free interest, ETFs and index funds which tend to be more tax efficient than actively managed funds. What to hold in tax advantage accounts. Certain investments generate regular taxable income, making them better suited for tax advantage accounts. Bonds and bond funds. Actively managed mutual funds which generate frequent capital gains distribution. High dividend stocks to defer taxes on dividend income. By strategically placing investment in the right account, investor can minimize annual tax liabilities and maximize after tax return. To build a tax-efficient investment strategy, investors should hold investment for more than a year to benefit from lower long-term capital gains tax rates. Use tax loss harvesting to offset gains and reduce taxable income. Be mindful of the wash sale rule when selling at a loss. Strategically place investment in taxable versus tax advantage accounts based on their tax characteristic. Understanding these tax considerations is key to enhancing portfolio performance and keeping more money in your pocket. By applying these strategies, investor can minimize tax drag and maximize long-term growth.